He was killed by a RPG in an ambush. And so after that, I joined the Marine Corps.
Revenge is as natural an inclination as it is a dangerous one. On the face of it, it's a way to balance the scales, to bring equity in a world that doesn't treasure fairness. But the tough thing about revenge is it is a journey, not a destination. It's a process that often requires you to trade in the best, most human parts of yourself for the promise that one day you'll be made whole. The thing is, revenge stories very rarely end well.
You know, we kind of wrestled just for a little bit on the ground. I tried to pull the gun away from him, but he had it slung around his neck, and I've had a hard time trying to pull it off of him. And I had my tomahawk just hanging around my waist, and so I grabbed that and used that against him.
What is true bravery? What makes a hero a hero? Tested by the worries of what's happening at home, thousands of miles away, and the reality of what you're facing here and now. When your life is in danger every second, and it's either kill or be killed. From Wondery and Incongruity Media, this is Anthony Russo, and this is War.
Hi, this is Anthony from This Is War, and we've got some really exciting news. You can now listen to new episodes of This Is War completely ad-free, exclusively on Stitcher Premium. In addition to our ad-free shows, you also can listen to tons of other Wondery shows like Sword and Scale or American History Tellers. Plus, with Stitcher Premium, you get access to hundreds of hours of original content, audio documentaries, and exclusive bonus episodes from some of your other favorite podcasts. If you're one of those people who likes to skip over ads anyway, Stitcher Premium is probably a great solution. You don't have to hover with your finger over the 30-second or 15-second button. You can just listen through the whole show uninterrupted. Sign up now for a free month of Stitcher Premium by going to stitcherpremium.com/Wondery and using the promo code Wondery. Then, once you've signed up, just download the Stitcher app for iOS or Android and start listening. That's stitcherpremium.com/Wondery. And the promo code is Wondery, Wondery.
Andrew Dang wanted to be a pilot and maybe an astronaut, but a childhood illness excluded him from pursuing that program. His brother Anthony had always teased him that he would enlist in the Marines just to show him up, but after 9/11, Andrew, who was the older of the two, decided that he wanted to enlist in the Marines and be the first one to go to war.
We had a knock on our door late at night, super late, and there were two policemen and two Marines dressed in their formal uniforms. First, I thought I was in trouble. You know, I was doing all kinds of dumb shit at school, and they told me to get my mom, and my mom came by, and she immediately knew, and she dropped down to her knees, and they said, "I'm sorry, but your son has been killed in action." He was killed in the First Battle of Ramadi, 2004. He was with the 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. He was a part of the quick reaction force for their battalion. He was killed by a RPG in an ambush, and so after that, I joined the Marine Corps.
Andrew Dang was one of the first people from the Bay Area to have been killed in combat since the Vietnam War, and the reporters were relentless. Eventually, his mother couldn't stand the constant attention or, really, the fact that her oldest son was gone, so she moved away, leaving her younger son to couch surf his way through senior year while waiting for his chance to go fight. There's no doubt that Anthony Dang wanted payback, but he also wanted to get money for college so that he could continue his brother's dream of becoming an aerospace engineer. Following in his brother's footsteps also got him noticed during boot camp at MCRD.
There was an assembly, pretty much on how to be a Marine, and how to be a member of the armed forces. And they had some other drill instructors come in. One of them asked, who here has a sibling that's in the Marine Corps? Who's a Marine, and I and a couple others raised their hands, And he pointed me out and he says, "You, what's your name?" And I said, "Recruit Dang," He pulled me aside and then told the whole class because he was my brother's drill instructor, and he knew that he had been killed in action. And then he just started to remember him, and he said that Andrew was really good at everything he did, and He made the ultimate sacrifice. That point really stuck with me because it gave me another boost in motivation again. It reminded me why I was there.
His recruiter had told him that there was a wait list for the infantry, so Dang enlisted as a small arms technician for expediency's sake. Couch surfing for another year wasn't something that appealed to him, and he was sure he'd be able to find his way into the fight. You see, small arms techs are attached to all manner of units in the Marines, but Dang wanted to be attached to a combat unit. His hope was to perform regular Marine duties like patrolling during the day and then come back and clean and maintain weapons in the evening. It wasn't an ideal situation, but it was the best way for him to get into the war as fast as possible.
I felt that I didn't quite fit in with a lot of the people. A lot of people joined certain non-combat jobs because they didn't want to go to combat, and here I was, the only person here that really wanted to go to combat. I was getting real tired of it, just, the daily grind of just training and not being deployed. And, every time a unit would go to the field, I'd go out with them. There was an opening for an armorer. They needed an armorer out in Iraq. And man, it was crazy. It was almost like that calling and finally came. They asked for volunteers and I was the only one that volunteered. So I ended up getting, being an individual augment and getting flown out to Iraq after that. That was in early 2006.
For every story about things going well for individual augments, it seems like there are 10 for people like Dang, who got to Iraq on orders but wasn't able to connect with his unit. This feels especially true for jobs like his, where you're not really part of the unit in any way, so you're not really missed. He was still trying to connect with the unit to which he'd been assigned when he was temporarily attached to an MP battalion.
I landed in Al Taqadum, which is just outside of Habanea. It was a convoy that had to go out to Al-Assad. We were just helping provide security. We were seriously in the middle of nowhere. It's just a desolate road. We were the second vehicle in the line, and the first vehicle, the driver, he swerves and then jumps out, and he's like telling us to stop, and we stopped just a dick hair away from a pressure switch, and we backed up like crazy, and we called the EOD to come out and blow that thing up. On the way back, in that same area, we ended up hitting an IED. It was kind of just in the middle of nowhere. We were just sitting there. I was up in the turret, and the thing went off, and I just remember the front end of the vehicle just smashing me in the face. The vehicle, front end lifted up, and I guess I got launched out. And, just woke up on the pavement. And at first I was just kind of dazed and confused, just trying to get my bearings. It wasn't until everyone was kind of rushing over to me that I realized I got blown up, I was fine, but, my ears were ringing like a motherfucker. It was all just kind of real fast and sudden. And, we had a bunch of shrapnel hit the window and cracked up the windows and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. The big one was the pressure switch one. I think that they were planning on us coming the other way so that we would blow up the smaller one and we would have ran over the large one, The vehicle still worked and everything, so we ended up coming back all right. So my time with the MPs was pretty tame for the most part. It wasn't until I ended up going to Ramadi after that, in which things got real rough.
Just about 2 years after his brother lost his life fighting in Ramadi, Dang would get his opportunity, but he was going to a place that was much worse than the one his brother had visited. Dang arrived just as the Second Battle of Ramadi was already popping off and about to escalate, joining the 3-8, the group he was supposed to be with right from the start. The battalion had already lost a bunch of guys and would lose more. The entire engagement would cost the Marines nearly 250 casualties, including 17 dead. It was the capital of the insurgency, and the 3-8 was tasked with taking and holding the center city against a well-supplied and highly motivated enemy. From March to November 2006, it was one of the most dangerous places in the world, and it was precisely where Dang wanted to be. Working out of Camp Blue Diamond, which was a converted palace, the Marines were practically under siege, with daily rocket, mortar, and small arms attacks on their base. Out on patrol, it was even worse.
The senior guy in the fire team was Ryan, his corporal, and he had been deployed multiple times already, and he was in the Battle of Fallujah in 2004. So he had a lot of combat experience. This other guy, his name was Joe, corporal as well, and this was his second deployment, and he just had 2 kids very recently. The youngest and junior, who's a 19-year-old kid and we called him Butters. It always seemed that there's always a Butters in everybody's fire team because there's always that one guy that's just super innocent, He just had a newborn too and was newly married. We were driving through the city, just doing a patrol, and we hit an IED. As soon as the IED blew up underneath us, we were under fire at the same time. We exited the vehicle so we can get into firing positions to shoot back. Corporal Joe at the time was the one yelling at us. So after we got hit by the IED and we're getting fired on, Corporal Joe yelled out, "Ambush!" And we tried to fire back, but at the beginning, it was a lot of confusion. Where we get fired from, you just hear like really loud snaps and then thuds on the vehicle when they're hitting all over you. It was really hard for us to get into a position where we could be effective. So we kind of just moved in on the building. Joe was yelling at us, like, "Get that building, let's move up." And I just followed him, really. He knew what he was doing.
Other teams were inbound, dealing with casualties and trying to gun down the enemies on the roofs and in the windows. Dang had never breached a door during combat. He'd heard horror stories about guys kicking open doors only to be faced with the enemy waiting with an RPK. He stacked up with Joe and Butters, and the three of them breached the door, and they set to clearing the house.
We all kind of, flooded in, and there was a pretty large room, kind of like the foyer area. Joe proceeded to go into another room. Butters went into another, and I hit up another one. But the one that I was in, I just remember a barrel of a gun was like near my face, but it was peeking around the side of the door. And so it wasn't pointed directly at me. So when it was in the doorway, but it was sideways, so I knew there was someone there. I grabbed it just instinctually, and it's hard to say what was running through my mind because I was running on pure instinct at the time. We kind of wrestled just for a little bit on the ground. I tried to pull the gun away from him. He had it slung around his neck, and I've had a hard time trying to pull it off of him. And I reached for anything I could. I tried to get my 9mm out, but it was too strapped in, and I had my tomahawk just hanging around my waist, and so I grabbed that and used that against him. I remember yelling something. I think I just yelled out, "I got one." That was about it. And then I kept on clearing. And outside, I remember just hearing just the loud, the heavy machine guns, just going to town on people on the rooftops or whatnot.
From the time the first shots were fired until the house was cleared was maybe a couple minutes at most. Dang said it felt like hours. With the house cleared and the outside ambush beaten back, Dang, Joe, and Butters headed back to the truck to assess the damage. As they emerged from the house, they saw the corpsman pulling Ryan's body from the truck. The corporal had been killed in the first moments of the attack, but none of them had realized it.
Hiring can be pretty time-consuming. You post a job to several online job boards only to get tons of the wrong resumes. Then you have to sort through all of those resumes just to find a few people with the right skills and experience. Those job sites that overwhelm you with the wrong resumes, they're not smart. That's why you should do the smart thing and go to ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter finds qualified candidates for you. Its powerful matching technology scans thousands of resumes to identify the people with the right skills, education, and experience, and then it actively invites them to apply for your job, so you get qualified candidates fast. It's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the US. This rating comes from hiring sites on Trustpilot with over 1,000 reviews. And right now, my listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. If you love this show, show your support for it and for ZipRecruiter by going to ZipRecruiter.com/THISISWAR. That's ZipRecruiter.com/thisiswar. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Loss is part of the deal. Everyone knows that intellectually. Some people survive and some people don't. There's no point in trying to reconcile the whys. That's not to say that the effort isn't worth it. But on a 4-man team, one guy missing is a lot. A missing leader emphasizes the loss, not only because of whatever institutional knowledge he has, but inspiration and also motivation. Someone to look up to and be confident in. Someone whose very presence indicates that all is well with the world, or at least that it can be.
I remember when I saw him and I was thinking to myself, is this what my brother looked like when he died? Is this what happened to him too? And I remember thinking, oh man, someone's gonna have to go to his family's home and they're gonna have to tell him, his wife and his kids, his mother, that he's been killed in action. And I remember stomaching a lot of that emotion, and it didn't really hit me until we got back to our hooches. We religiously played Tiger Woods golf on like a community Xbox in the hooch, and his avatar came up, and that's when it really hit me that he was gone. Yeah, going back out again, it was a mix of emotions. You're angry and afraid, but no one ever says anything. It was kind of quiet. I remember we were in the chow hall. No one wanted to bring it up. Everyone was kind of quiet. We were kind of pissed off at ourselves for not doing something about it, like kind of blaming ourselves as if we should have been the one to go. I mean, I definitely felt that way. Ryan had a kid and a wife. I had nothing. I had nobody. My family left me, and my friends were not really around. I remember everyone getting care packages too, and everyone would get packages from their families and loved ones back home, and I got nothing.
Losing Ryan only amplified the closeness that he felt with the other guys on the team, Joe and Butters. Maybe especially because it felt as if he didn't have anything to lose, or that no one would miss him, he started to fixate on their safety. Sometimes there's nothing you can do, but sometimes, he thought, there is. Dang resolved that he wanted to be the one taking the brunt of the risks. If they were going to keep spending their days kicking indoors, he wanted to be the point man. He told the others as much as they resumed their mission.
There wasn't a fight over it. I just said, hey, I want to take point from here on in, if that's cool with you guys. And no one really objected to it. Joe had a kid, and same with Butters. They don't want to be the ones to not come home to their families. It was something I wanted to do anyways, and they're not going to say no to that. It made me scared shitless. It was not. I knew it wasn't a bright idea, but I'd much rather have it be me than, let's say, Butters, because he probably would have had to take points since he was like the junior guy. But he'd always be talking about his kid and showing his pictures and stuff. If he died, I wouldn't be able to live with myself like that. It's just so hard. And if he died and I could have prevented it by taking point, I wouldn't let that happen. I wouldn't want that to happen. That notion of, trying to look out after them, it did come from my brother. Not only what my brother would have done, but it's also the memory of what happened after he died. I didn't want someone to go to their homes and tell their newborn son or daughter that, your father is killed in action. I didn't want that to happen to anybody else. It just made sense to me that if someone were to go, I'd much rather have it be me, because these guys had families to go home to, and I had nothing to go home to.
Throughout the summer and well into the fall, U.S. forces worked to pacify Ramadi, block by block. At one point, attacks on the government center were so regular and effective that the military leveled all of the buildings around it as the only way to thwart snipers trying to assassinate the governor and whomever else they could get in their crosshairs. When intelligence reports showed that the hospital had been taken by insurgents, the U.S. mounted a massive assault on the entire area, again clearing block by block to retake the hospital.
It was one of the only times we had to work jointly with other branches of the military. I remember Navy SEALs were out there, some Army units were out there, and we were fighting alongside them, taking over critical pieces of ground. So I knew it was a big deal, because normally if it was just small things, we kind of just dealt with our own command. Butters, he was a huge dude, and he carried the SMAW with him, which is a reloadable rocket launcher. Sometimes we would have to use it because a lot of times when we try and call in like a JDAM or something, some from the air, like an airstrike or something on a building which has a ton of enemy combatants in it, they would just tell us to fuck off, So we had the SMAW with us, and sometimes we'd have to use that instead. One time Butters had to use it. I remember one time distinctly, he shot the ground. He kind of missed a little bit, and it deflected off of the ground and hit an adjacent building that was next to the target that we were trying to hit. And, in the rubble, there was just civilians in it. And it was difficult to see. And it was very difficult for Butters because some of them were children, and I can tell that it probably reminded him of his own child at home. And I get that ate away at him. And I knew that kind of messed him up in the head a little bit.
Sometimes there are no good solutions and nothing to do but keep fighting and press on. The U.S. took the hospital in July, and from then through the rest of the summer, Dang and his team were kicking in doors and clearing houses, taking prisoners when they were able, but there weren't a lot of people surrendering. You have to remember, Al-Qaeda had essentially declared this their capital, and they were putting up proportional resistance. It was going to be a long, difficult summer filled with days of clearing houses and very little rest.
And a lot of times when we cleared homes, we'd have to stay there for a long time, sometimes, hours or throughout the night. And so we would just hang out and eat MREs and just chill out until, morning, until it's ready to storm the homes again, And one time we were kind of rushing it a little bit because we were getting real tired, carrying around all this gear and running house to house and breaching doors gets real fucking tiring real fast. Joe and I were up on the rooftop just waiting for everyone else to, clear their home so we can just get back to it. Yeah, we were just talking, just saying what we're going to do next and just complaining of how tired we were and how fucking hot it was, Then Joe got shot. Yeah, just out of nowhere. It was just a crack in the air. And I was like, what the fuck was that? And then he fell to the ground and then there was already just blood all over the place. He was shot pretty bad, but he was still alive. As soon as he was shot in the neck, we were under a lot of fire from like almost every direction. I couldn't really tell. We were indoors and I could just hear, impacts all around us. I dragged him downstairs for a little bit and then got Butters to help me move him. I remember Joe, he just said, I just want to see my kids one more time. And then he ended up dying right there just from bleeding out,
This is really the crux of it. This pressure of action and danger and responsibility in the face of terrible loss. With Ryan and now Joe gone, the 4-man fire team was down to 2 guys, Dang and Butters, and neither of them could take a moment to comment on it or reflect or even really acknowledge the weight of the moment because it had passed and the enemy was relentless. Making it out of the house alive was all that was left to them to do.
It feels like you're being hunted, It's very strange. I felt very constrained, like I was trapped almost, I couldn't get out. We couldn't really change buildings because we were getting fired on from all directions by small arms. There's a sniper that wouldn't allow us to just stay in one place for too long. We were kind of hopeless and trying to just take people out as they got close enough, but we really had to rely on the other teams to come help us out because at that point we were kind of trapped. Butters set up at a window and we were kind of moving back and forth because if we stay in the same window, they'll eventually start just blasting you through that window. So we kind of changed position here and there. It was getting pretty crazy. And I remember joking before that, I'm not going to be on Al Jazeera getting my head cut off. So I'd always carry like an extra 9mm round in my pocket just in case if anything happened, I would just blow my own brains out. And we were getting to the point where we were running super low on ammo. And I remember, fingering in my pocket for that round to get that thing ready. Good thing, the rest of the teams, they came and helped us out. And when all the dust settled, then Joe was just there, he was still gone. And it was hard. It was hard to swallow that in reality. We had him medevaced out and I stayed for a little bit and we kind of waited for, other teams to come and take our position, and then we headed back. After that happened, we didn't go out very much more.
Butters was cycled out with the 3-8, but Dang still had a couple months left on his tour, so he was attached to 3rd Recon out of Camp Schwab, Okinawa. These were the guys he was training with before he came to Iraq. The move felt appropriate. Dang was still a bit of a loner, floating from assignment to assignment, but seeing familiar faces was really something he needed at this point. He joined the 3rd Recon up in Fallujah, which mostly had been pacified by this time, and spent the rest of his war chasing down bad guys with them.
The last time I ever went out on an operation, it was a raid. They were pretty high-level operators. We had to go and breach a home for some critical intelligence or something. There was like a high-value target in there. But I guess, they were already ready for us because the place was like kind of booby-trapped a little bit. As soon as we arrived on site, they started firing at us. I got shot right in the chest, and I thought I got mortally wounded. Someone said, "Man down," and they just dragged me out, and I just got a ton of spalling, all in my arms and legs, and I thought I was actually hit. Spalling is where the round impacts the plate, and then it fractures into a bunch of pieces, and those little pieces, they kind of fragment into you. I did have some scrapes and stuff, so I was somewhat confused because I didn't know what the fuck spalling was either. The doc just gave me the green light, says I'm good. And so I got back into it.
They finished clearing the house. The high-value target wasn't there, and a few weeks later, Dang was back in Okinawa, cleaning and repairing weapons. But a lot of what he was doing felt a little meaningless. As an individual augment, or IA, Dang hadn't really come back with a company. He arrived in Okinawa the same way he arrived in Iraq, on his own. Dang had to begin to wrestle with whether he would extend or call it quits and, if he did, what he would do after. Although isolation was something he already had started to crave by the time he was back in the armory, Dang didn't see it that way at the time. He came back to a room filled with broken weapons he had to deal with, which was way easier than dealing with the fact of his coming back at all.
When I got back to Okinawa, it was really strange because they held an assembly for all the IAs that went over, and they wanted to, thank us for doing our part, but I didn't go. I just went back to work. I just went to the armory and worked on my guns, I didn't feel like it was something to be proud of. Like, I didn't feel like I contributed enough. For some reason, I wanted to be the one to die. I didn't want my friends to die. It was really hard to swallow the reality that these people with families and kids, they're the ones who died, and me with nothing to lose, I'm the one that survived. It was hard. People should be applauding like the people who didn't make it back, I felt that I shouldn't have came back. I felt that I should have died there. In some sense, part of me did.
Andrew's plan had been to enlist for 4 years, get a degree with the GI Bill in aerospace engineering, and then make a life out of that. Since Dang's only plan was to follow in his brother's footsteps, that's what he did. Anthony Dang spent the rest of his time in the Marines helping train people for urban combat. He also underwent some psychiatric evaluations. They gave him a PTSD diagnosis, but he blew it off. Sure, he had some of the symptoms, but not without reason. It was something he knew he'd have to work on his own anyway.
At first, I worked at Sony testing video games. It was ridiculous. Everyone there was just so young, and I was like this old combat vet. It was really hard because I felt that I deserved more. I ended up leaving that job for a better paying one that was more in line with engineering, but I don't know, it was not what I thought it would happen. Ideally, I thought I would get out of the military and I would get a good paying job. And when I came back and I was living in Redwood City, I was staying with one of my high school friends. And I thought I could just, slip back into that reality of being friends with my friends from high school and living with them and everything would be all right again. Just rewind the clock, play it back from where it was, but it didn't turn out that way. I came back and I was just so different. I grew so differently from everybody else.
Like so many veterans who came back at this time, Dang had to deal with way more than just reintegrating. It was the end of 2008, and he was going to school and looking for meaningful work at the height of the financial crisis. He drifted a little further away from his friends and what family he had left and descended into a life of silence and solitude for as long as he could stand to.
Combat veterans were really getting left in the dust. And I felt that I had been abandoned. I had to go to the VA a bunch of times, to get my head straight and everything. Right before the holidays, like Thanksgiving was coming up soon in 2009, I attempted suicide. And the psychiatric personnel on the VA got wind, and they brought some police over and restrained me. And they had like an ambulance come over, and they put me in the ambulance, and it took me to the Palo Alto VA center where they had like a psychiatric ward, and they took my shoelaces off, which is fucking weird, and put tape over it because I guess people can hang themselves with their shoelaces, I guess. It was strange. It was like I had to go to prison. It felt like a prison. I had to take their medication. They closely monitored me throughout the day and night. It was hard to live it, especially during the holidays and during Thanksgiving. My friends came by and brought me a Thanksgiving dinner, which was nice of them. I had to lie to them, and I told them that I'm in there because, I told them I flipped out on my psychiatrist and they put me in there. I didn't want to tell them that I committed suicide, or tried to, I should say. And when I got out, everyone still treated me differently. They treated me like a nut job, they had to be careful with what they say around me and all that stuff, and it was difficult. So I moved away after that. Moved away to San Diego, applied for a different degree, something more in line with what I wanted to do.
Dang wanted to work in public policy, advocating for veterans. He knew his experience wasn't completely unique. He also finally had found that he couldn't really live in Andrew's place any more than he could live in Ryan's or Joe's. Instead, he wanted to try to find a different way to honor them. Thinking about them, he worried that Butters maybe was having the same kinds of troubles that he was, and he decided to reach out.
They see these people as just disposable tools of policy, but they don't really see them as people. You know, these are people with families, kids, and wives, husbands. Probably around 2010 or so, I thought I'd find Butters online and talk to him, because I struggled a lot, and I felt that maybe he's struggling too. I should reach out to him to see what's up. I found him through Facebook, and I talked to I sent him a message, but then I got a message back from his wife, and he told me that Butters committed suicide a year back. So that was really hard to swallow as well. It changed a lot. I thought I was alone in it. I thought I was the only one that was going crazy, and I thought it was all just me. But I realized that I wasn't the only one that was suffering from it. I felt that I let him down big time, because had I just talked to him in the beginning, right when I got out, maybe he wouldn't have done it. So I definitely do feel some guilt when it comes to Butters doing that. I can only do the best I can, for sure, but I also have to live for not just my brother now, but for, Ryan, Joe, and Butters. They've all gone. I feel that they drive me, that I need to live for them and do something in their name, because if I just let it die right there and let it be and live my life, and just be, fine, it's not, I need to make it worth it. All this pain, all this suffering, it needs to be worth something. It needs to mean something.
Dang had come to understand that honoring his brother and his comrades wasn't as much a matter of vindication as it was an opportunity to let their sacrifices act as a kind of fuel for the new person he would have to build. Even though he decided that he wouldn't live his brother's life in the way that he had hoped when he enlisted, he could still find meaning in all of the loss. The first thing he had to do, though, was relinquish his vendetta and come to a new understanding about what his service and his life after service is supposed to mean.
I went there thinking that I could release my rage, get my pound of flesh, for Andrew. But there was just so much more loss and so much more pain that it brought me than it did peace. It made me see more people die that I didn't want to die. And those people, it really stuck with me. From that point on, I couldn't just live for myself and my own, notions of vengeance or whatever.
Today, he's got degrees from San Jose State and Harvard, where he went after he understood that public policy and not aerospace engineering was the key to living his life while still doing what his brother would have wanted. Dang hopes to head to Washington, D.C. and see if he can do something a little more concrete to help not only combat veterans, but also the enlisted who may be asked to join their ranks.
I don't think there is a happy ending, not yet at least, but I think that the sacrifices by my brother, Ryan, Joe, and Butters, they've pushed me into trying to make things better for all those service members who maybe later on don't have a voice or a choice if they have to be deployed to a combat zone. Because I think a lot of people don't bring that perspective, that there's a real human element to these people on the ground. Even 5 years ago, I feel that I wasn't sure of my direction, whether I was making a difference or not, but I can see that there's a little bit of light, that I have a chance to make some changes if I can get a position that allows me to do so. But it's just getting that chance that's the difficult part, finding someone to give me that chance is going to be hard, but I'll keep trying, because that's what my brother would have done.
And that's the tough thing about living for someone who's no longer with us. Lots of people never get the chance to seek revenge, and even fewer who do seek it eventually learn the lesson that it's a pointless exercise, a kind of misplaced attempt at honor. If we want to honor someone, the best way to do it is to keep their memories alive in our actions, to pick up the best parts of their worldview and keep them as our own. Not so much so we can walk in their shoes, but rather so they can continue to advise us in a way, long after they're gone. Next time on This Is War.
I raised up to fire at him. I was thinking, this is a car bomb coming right at me, is what I'm thinking. And that's exactly what it was.
Are you a combat veteran, or do you know one with a story to tell? Reach out to us at stories@thisiswar.com with your dates and branch of service and a brief description of the experience that you'd like to share. If you like the show, you can help support us by visiting our sponsors or by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you're listening right now. This Is War was written by me, Anthony Russo, and produced by Incongruity Media. Executive producer Hernan Lopez for Wondery.